Hello then, welcome to another one. I trust I found you well. We're back with another one. And sometimes I tell you I can be skitsy. And I do things that are not part of the script and not part of what we have spoken about. Anyway, I'm back with another one, and my name is Tatenda. For those that do not know me, for those that know where I come from, it's Jiri Say. For the guys that are in America, Australia, and everywhere else, good day, mate. Howdy, mate. I trust I find you in good spirits. For the guys that are in China, you get it. You don't get it. Forget about it. Anyway, we're back with another one. And today it's a know how to episode. And the reason why is so that I can encourage you to be the best that you can be and giving you the tools and the tricks to get you to where I am. I think one thing as well in this life is we think that once we've made it, then no one else must make it. And once we have made it, everyone else must sort of like always be bothered and always be wondering, how do we make such things work? And I still remember from the day that we started with DJ Sbu and you're saying, press record. Did you get that part? Since we started with DJ Sbu. Right? Anyway, what I'm trying to get at is we always say just press record. And for the people that want to start an online hustle or an online business or an online platform like what I'm doing right now, one will always be wondering, what is it that I can do or how can I do it? And the reason why I'm coming to you with this episode is because a few days ago, I got an inbox from somebody. And she's my nephew and niece, a girl, niece, yeah. And so I get a message, hello, Uncle T, hope you're well. I want to start a podcast where I speak to teenagers. I was like, wow, that is very doable. Well done. Definitely it is doable, and I'm always available. I even said on past episodes that come to the studio and we'll give you a different setup just for you to start. The equipment that I have, let it not only benefit me, but benefit you as well. But the one thing that comes with it is consistency in making sure that you are showing up even if you don't feel like it. That's the important part. That's one. And two is to make sure that you're not worried about the numbers, but rather what is the content that I'm putting out there. And if anyone were to stumble on it, are they going to find relevance in it? So with that said, let's get into the reason why we are here today. And before we start with the video, please like, share, and subscribe. And let me know in the comment section what you think about the video and the past videos as well, the ones with guests and the one that I'm alone. And from there, that's how we grow. Sharing, make sure that the next person hears about me. And liking, make sure that YouTube pushes this video forward. And when YouTube pushes it, more people are going to listen to it. And if more people are listening to it, the more chances of myself growing and you learning. You get that? Okay, awesome. Now that the nitty-gritties are out the way, let's speak about how to start a podcast. And I'm not an expert in this, and I'm going to give you the account of my starting, how I started a podcast, and what made me start a podcast. All right. So first things first, if people remember, back in the day, a few years ago, my wife and I had a YouTube channel, and it was Being the Moyos. And in there, we were speaking about marriage and how we do things and whatnot. And it's always been a dream of mine to have this kind of setup, to have a microphone and have lights and whatnot where I could speak and the people would see the mic. But at that point, I didn't understand, or I didn't know that is what is called a podcast. So I've always wanted to learn and do things differently and challenge myself in that regard. So obviously, when it comes to having microphones like this, you also need to have a stand that is going to allow for all this to happen. But this is where I started. And I still remember I started off with my phone. I had an iPhone 10 with lapel microphones, the one that you clip on. And the first episode that I did sort of like came and it was mushed, like shh, it had so much hissing. And I went onto YouTube to try and find out how best I can do to make sure that that goes away. But it never did anyway. And I still remember I was also recording using the voice memo app on the phone. And in as much as that was not professional, I did not quite enjoy it. So I still remember when I then said, yes, fine, coming from the coming from being the Moyers to a podcast that was going to deal with men. So I then said, okay, fine, this is my opportunity to spike up conversations with men. So I sent out a message to the people that I was coaching at the time, telling them of what I had started, but I needed a USB microphone. A USB microphone is something that you can plug and play onto your phone. Then from there, you make sure that wherever you're sitting, it's quiet, so it's a quiet space. A lot of people get into the wardrobe. It sounds funny, but a lot of people do that. I never went into the wardrobe to record, but I'll just make sure that you start recording after 10, 11, 12, when people get quiet or when the complex sort of dies down and there's no cars that are pulling in or anything of that matter. I also used to put a blanket over the door as soundproofing, so the sound was bouncing off and also a blanket on the table that I was recording with at the time. So what I'm trying to get at is that's exactly where I started. I started with a USB microphone, and that was 350 Rand. That was in April of 2022. Yes. April of 2022, I had a USB microphone and I was recording with that because the lapel mics never worked. Because remember, if you're using an iPhone, you still need to have that adapter that changes the lightning cable to the 3.5 millimeter jack. Then from there, it runs to the phone. Then you can record sound. So I then moved on. As soon as I got an USB mic, I then went on to GarageBand. GarageBand comes standard with iOS. And for the people that are using laptops and all that, they can use Audacity on the laptop on Windows. Otherwise, GarageBand will work on iPhone as well. It does as the same way it does on Mac. So got onto GarageBand, and now I was producing content that was good, and I could feel that it sounded better, because at the end of the day, people will forgive you for good sound, but so they will forgive you if the sound is good but bad picture quality. But the thing is, I could not go into video podcasting because I had limited resources, because that would mean that I have to get an extra phone, the phone that is going to be taking a video, then the other phone is taking the audio, then I'll sync up the two. So that's why for the first 6 months, I never went into video podcasting. I was just doing audio podcasting. I signed up with Anchor. Anchor FM is a free podcast hosting website where you host. There's such a thing as hosting your podcast. So Anchor is the one that holds your podcast and then distributes it to Apple Music and Amazon and all the podcast streaming platforms. You cannot do it by yourself. You have to have a host. So you've got Anchor, you've got Buzzsprout, you've got Lip. There's so many hosting sites. You can go onto Google and search which one is going to be best for what you want to do or what you want to achieve. But I started with Anchor, and I'm still being hosted by Anchor. It then moved on to be called Spotify for podcasters, but it's still the same thing basically. Then that is how podcasts then go on to Spotify, Apple Podcast, and any other streaming platform, as long as you've linked what we call your RSS feed. So your RSS feed is what is specific to your podcast. English. So your RSS feed is what is specific to your podcast. That is your identity number, or your ID, if I could put it that way. So I'm on Anchor, and I'm using GarageBand, and that's how my episodes are running. But the thing with the USB microphone is you can only use one way. You can't have two people, or you can't connect two. I could not connect two USBs onto the same phone, even if there may be an option of having a split where you've got one lightning cable and two split USBs. The phone will only be able to pick up one. Same thing with a laptop. I think if you plug in a USB mic, you can only have one, unless there is a way of jailbreaking the whole thing and people do it, then you can have two. But if you are going to start, I advise you start with just yourself and speak. So the little girl comes to me and says that she wants to start a podcast and also speak to the teenagers. My question was, you need to know your why. A lot of times we just want to jump onto something because it looks nice. For me to have the main podcast behind me, yes, it looks nice. And the whole setup, it looks nice, yes. And it is a good thing to want to be professional. But I don't suggest that you rush into having all this before you actually understand the nitty-gritties of what happens. A lot of times people want to do these things because it's amazing when you see Meg G and his podcast is running over onto 1 million now, and each episode is getting like 500 to 1 million views. All fair and square. But if you track back to where Meg G started, he celebrated his first 100 views, I think, in the first year or first 2 years. Then everything sort of like started moving towards the direction that he was meant to. So the next part that we're going to speak about is don't let the numbers decide to make you or break you. Numbers will always be there. Numbers will always come. But consistency is something that you cannot buy. You have to. The moment you know your why, it's going to push you with your consistency. And I'm encouraging you that if you're going to start a podcast, don't start a podcast because you're excited, because it gets tough. It gets really, really tough. So I carried on with the phone, with the USB mic, until I also found out about what we call an audio interface. That is the time where I was now thinking of bringing other people onto the show. Because first up, when I was using a USB mic, I would speak, then I would give it to the guest, then they speak. So it made it so awkward in a sense that there is always going to be that spot where it's quiet when you're changing the microphones. Then there's always going to be that noise when mics are swapping hands. Or even there are certain guests that you can put the mic into their mouths, but they want to hold on to it. And at the same time, you can't say, no, don't touch it, because you're going to spoil their train of thought, or you're also going to mess up with their confidence in what they wanted to portray or what they wanted to speak about. So I carried on again with just swapping the USB mic from one person to the next person. And in edit, that's when I would cut out those parts. And it was so much work, because now if you're going to have an hour episode, it's an hour episode, but after cutting all those quiet spots, you're going to find out that you probably have 40 minutes worth of footage, or 45 minutes. And that was daunting anyway. Then I found out about what you call an audio interface. And I went on to Google to check. I was on YouTube to check how best can I have a two-person setup where two dynamic microphones can be able to be picked by the phone or by the software that is recording your audio. And I found out the audio interface did just that. But the problem with the audio interface now is it is recording two separate tracks from the same audio source. So what I mean by that is you'll find out that guest A is speaking from the right ear and guest B is speaking from the left ear. So if you've got earphones, you actually pick it up that, so when the other person is speaking, it's more this side. When the other person is speaking, it's the other side. And that is a bit disturbing for the person that is listening in headphones. But I didn't have a choice. That was the only viable solution that I had to still get stereo sound, but recorded separately. Right. So I carried on with that, and it was great. So now what I was doing was I was connecting the audio interface onto the phone. Then from the phone, then I connect the microphones, the XLR into the microphone jack. So it has two. I got the M Audio Duo, which gets two microphones in. So I got that and I carried on until just recently when my wife suggested that we turn one of the rooms into a podcast studio. That's what brings us to what we've got right now. So I then got an audio mixer that has got 6 microphone inputs. So by 6 microphone inputs, that means I can be able to get 6 guests to speak separately onto their own microphone without having to swap. Because when I had the M Audio Duo, I also ran into a position whereby what happens if I've got 4 guests? And what happens if I've got 3 guests? What happens if I've got more than 2 guests? Because the M Audio only catered for only 2 at the time. That's why I then introduced the mixer. So the mixing console that I've got is a hybrid, and it has an audio interface inside, built in on the inside as well. So what I then do is I connect my microphones on there. Then from there I'm no longer running things into the phone like I did. I then got a laptop. Now the M Audio interface is running from the laptop because the audio mixer does not have a USB plug-in. So what I then do is I then connect the mixer onto the audio interface. Then audio interface, it runs into the laptop. From there, that's how I record my sound into the laptop. Then I'm still recording my video with my iPhone 10 right now. And from there, I then sync the audio. So I can still shoot in 4K 24. Then from there, I cut it out to make it nicer and all professional. I also got studio lights. That's how much we are growing. So we got studio lights. We've got 3 studio lights. We've got one on my left. We've got one that is directly at me next to the camera. Then there's one onto my right, which is your left. Then we've got the laptop here. We've got the boom stands that we got, then mounted them onto a high table. The table that I got, I think it was $600 on Facebook Marketplace. So now let's break down how much it has costed us to be able to get into where we are. You're seeing the Man Podcast. And with this, we just went into a shop, a China shop, and we got this, and they look nice. So I'm like, okay, we're going to get that, and we're going to move them like that, and did the same thing with the boxes one, and then accessorized it and put everything inside there just for you guys to make it look, for us to make it look nicer. With the blue paint, initially, my idea was to have black. I wanted this to have like that warmly feel or that manly feel, which is black. But I didn't buy this paint. I asked one of my clients if they had extra paint in the house that they had left, because at the end of the day, you also don't want to use money that you don't have because you haven't started making money. But then at the same time, you want to be as professional as possible so that when the time is right and when you start making the money, any company that wants to sponsor you can see the track record and how consistent you've been, and also how much effort you've put in to making sure that your setup is professional. And I can see my setup is professional. So we got blue paint from one of my mates, Mike. It was left over from his son's room painting, and we got that. And initially, I didn't even want this blue. But then when the blue came in, that was the only option that we had. Then we painted it blue and it looked nice. Then this was not part of the plan. Man Podcast, it was not part of the plan. And I still remember speaking to my wife at the time, and I was like, okay, there's bigger ones. There were bigger ones that are bigger than this, and they were not going to say man, but they were white as well. And they're thinking, I think it would be nice and big for you to see, only to realize that this size was actually the better size. And I think this came out a lot nicer. This as well, we're walking into the China shop. You know, when you get into China shops, you're always going to find something that it looks weird, but it does the work. And that's the one thing that if you are a creative, always find ideas in and around where you are. It doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense to the next person, but if it makes sense to you, please go ahead and just buy it. So we then thought, okay, there's got these letters, and they usually use these letters for names on bedsides. So you've got your son's name is Alake, then you're going to write on his bed that Alake, and it looks nice. And especially to kids, it's amazing. These things come with with LED lights. Okay, sorry. They come with LED lighting. And when you switch it on, especially at night, the kid is sleeping and you switch it on and it has their name on, it just boosts their confidence in a way. That's how we like, oh, okay, cool. So if you can boost confidence in a way, surely it can mean something when someone is listening and they're seeing Men Podcast instead of me putting a logo on the side of my video, because I was then starting video podcasting. So that was that. And these little lights over here, they always switch off, but we use them for load shedding as well. And we just thought, okay, we're just going to accessorize it. So it's just a matter of just pushing on and accessorizing it and just making sure that your space is good, right? So fine, we changed this whole room into a podcast studio. We got an audio mixer, we got the audio interface, we got the laptop, we got the lighting, we've got the boom stands, and what else did we get? And these chairs. And all in all, the audio mixer, the hybrid was 2,500. The table was 600 rand. The boom stands were 199 each. So for two, that's 400 bucks. For the chairs, I think it was 500 or 550. I'm asking 500 rand. It was 500 rand for these high chairs. And the lights, the big ones from the side, they are 1150. Then the small one was 1010. So 1010, right? So the lighting on its own, that's 3,000 plus 2.5 for the audio mixer. Also, you don't need to have a 6-person's mixer. You can have a 4-person. And it works out a lot cheaper. I think 1,000 rand or $100 or something like that. The audio mixer, we got that. I remember the whole bill for the audio mixer and the microphones. We got 3 microphones, audio mixer, headphones. I think the whole bill went up to 4.7, if I'm not mistaken, for the M audio stuff, including these microphones and the microphone covers. Then that became 3 for the lighting. Then these things, I think this was 179 or 299, one of the two. So same thing with that. That's 600 bucks. Those little things, those little lights here, those were like 119 each, so 220, 240 for the two. So all in all, I think my studio has costed me 10,000, give or take, right? But don't let the number scare you, because you can still do it without all this. All you just need to do is make sure that you keep on pressing record. So when the girl came to me and said this is what she wants to do, I said, I want you to record 10 episodes and you're going to send them to me via text or via WhatsApp every week, because you want your episodes to run weekly. So you're going to make sure that you send it to me once a week. You choose on the day, you choose the time. So I expect to see a WhatsApp from you with an audio that was recorded raw, regardless whether it's 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 1 hour, whatever, but make sure you're consistent with it. So before you start a podcast, a lot of times we want to start a podcast and we have one episode in and we're excited, people subscribe and whatnot, and we burn out. The reason why you have 10 is because even if you then decide, okay, I'm going to stop, that is 10 weeks worth of footage. And by the time you get to the week 10, you're already in the groove of making sure that you produce and you produce and you produce. But the one thing that is important, more than the equipment that you may have, is to make sure that you stay consistent. And I'm encouraging you, if you want to start this, you need to stay consistent. And the more you throw yourself out there, it's just like spreading seeds. The less seeds that you spread, the less harvest that you may get. The more seeds that you throw out, the more seeds, the more harvest that you may get. So the more videos, the more content that you produce, there is a high chance that more people are going to find out about them. And then from there, I put short clips on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook. And preferably, if you want, you can have a separate account for Instagram that is specifically for your podcast. And the same thing on YouTube the same thing for Instagram, Facebook, and I don't know Snapchat, whatever. I don't know how Snapchat works, but try as much to take snippets of everything that you've spoken about. And in every episode, there's always going to be that powerful nugget that you say here and there. And when that happens, that's the clip that you take and you put it on social media. Therefore, when someone bumps into it, they're going to go, let me just go in and see what this conversation was about, if it was with a guest or if it was yourself. But the most important thing is to stay consistent and just press record. You don't need professional equipment like I have now, but you can start with your phone. The fact that you are listening to me right now, that means you can. Just press record. Even if the sound is not great, you can still use your earphones. You put your earphones in your ear, you get the mouthpiece onto your mouth as close as possible to your mouth, and you're going to speak. It's going to give you good quality audio without even finding a USB mic. You don't need to spend much before you make anything, and you also you don't want to use money that you don't have or money that you haven't made. At the same time, if there is an opportunity for you to have money or for you to invest in this hustle, in this business, then go ahead and do so, because the returns are going to be valuable. And also you're going to challenge yourself in the process, because you are adding value to the next person. And as you're adding value to the next person, you are adding value to yourself as well. And in turn, you are going to make that money. So that is how I started the podcast. And I hope that you find this relevant. I hope that you will find goodness in what I just spoke about to make sure that you're a better person. And guess what? I cannot wait that I just did a video on how to start a podcast. I feel like, I think I've been consistent. I think that's one thing I can pat myself on the back. I've never missed an episode. I think I missed January or December when we took a break from the 15th of December to the first week of Jan. And from there, we're carrying on. And I'm encouraging you, the more you're consistent with anything that you do in your life, the better the results. I'll see you guys bright and early tomorrow with the short videos. You remember those? We're coming back with those again. And hopefully you found relevance into this. If you're still here, please consider subscribing, liking, and sharing, and do all the nitty-gritties to make sure that the next person hears about me and supports me as well. I would love to hear from you. So let me know in the comment section what you think of this video. And if you've got any questions whatsoever, I will answer them with regards to starting a podcast and how best you can speak or make sure that you've got a better voice, or how to be charismatic and smart and all the nitty-gritties. I love you guys. Stay safe. Keep working. Keep believing. And see you guys on the other side.
Writing the podcast Being Men, as I learn to be a man. Understanding the time, lessons and patience inquire to be a 10. A series of compass insights of the journey for a different turn. Being men, where rivers of the mind flow to give a damn. A movement with river flows, so I be a bailer I can. All stones are turned, all souls affirmed. Writing the podcast Being Men. All stones are turned, all souls affirmed. Welcome to Being Men.